Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just got a lot more people just joining, so we will wait a couple of minutes before, a minute or so before we kick off. Hi, Justin, Hamish, Mark, Keith, hello.
Julie, how you going?
Good, good. David Wood, how are you?
Doing well,
Beth?
thanks, Julie.
Hi, Beth, Malcolm, great to see you guys.
Okay. How's the goats?
The goats are currently, it's raining, so they're very miserable. How are your goats?
They're good. Yep. It's not
Excellent.
raining as much here, but we probably need the rain.
All right. Okay, what we might do is we might kick off. So people can just keep joining us as we're moving through. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Petty. I'm the General Manager for Policy and Projects for Seafood Industry Australia. Thank you so much for making the time to join. This is the third of three webinars today about the Fisheries and Seafood Program. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. I am joining you from Yagara land, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as emerging leaders. For today's webinar, we're working through the Futures of Seafood Roadmap, what it means for you, how you can get involved and provide feedback, and how you can use this resource for your own needs, however you would like to moving forward with particular challenges in your jurisdictions or industries or questions that you have. I should say up front, this webinar is being recorded for those who are unable to make it, and that the project has been supported by funding from the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation, the Blue Economy CRC, the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, and the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. It's also received countless in-kind contributions from Australian Fisheries Management Forum members, people from all across the industry, as well as research partners. Before we jump into the formal presentation now, I'd like to quickly introduce Dr. John Ackerman. So John is our new CEO with Seafood Industry Australia. This is his very first week, and we thought it was a great opportunity for him to just pop in, say hello to you all, and for the most part be listening in to the journey that Ange will be taking us on through the presentation. But John, did you want to perhaps say hello to everyone?
Thanks very much, Julie. I presume you can all hear me. Excellent. Look, I won't take up too much of your time. First of all, I want to say it is actually great for me to be back into the seafood industry. For those that know me will know this is where I started some years ago and got diverted with a few other land-based agriculture aspects. So I am truly honoured and privileged, I think, to be able to take this role. Clearly, there is a really strong foundation that the SIA team have already built, and I, again, feel extremely happy, proud that I can be part of this to work for the industry. I'm excited particularly about the Futures of Seafood program. I myself come from a science-based career, and so evidence to me is something that is critical, and I think in this day and age probably never more important. I will keep my comments to that at the moment, Julie. I am really looking forward to being able to meet everybody in person, talk to you, listen to some of the aspects that you're interested in, including some of the challenges, and hopefully seeing you all at Seafood Directions, end of July in Sydney. So please, I will, of course, be there. Thanks, Julie. I look forward to hearing more and hearing from everyone in time.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So, yes, quick reminder, please start booking your tickets for Seafood Directions if you haven't already, and your accommodation. You don't want to miss out. What we'll do now is I'll introduce, Angela Williamson is CEO for the Blue Economy CRC. Ange has been working on this project from day one and is here to take us through a bit of a journey of where we've gotten to and how you can start to have some contribution to the project and the roadmap that's been developed, looking at, I guess, future phases of where the industry is going to move through. So, Ange, hopefully my screen is sharing there.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks, JP, and thank you, John, and welcome, John. And I think it's not often that you start a new job and you get in front of you a whole reset kind of agenda. So I'm really looking forward to working with you and everyone on this call and those who have been on the previous calls on where the futures of seafood has got to and where we're heading next. So if you recall, this original study when we were funded back in 2024 was very much focused on a variety of packages. And where we focus today is package 4, which is a roadmap. And that really is a bit of a so what piece. Work package 1 was state of play. Work package 2 was what else is happening in the ocean estate alongside us or in other government decisions. Work package 3 was led by Beth Fulton, who's on the line as well. Beth, thank you so much for being absolutely amazing and helping the Australian fisheries and aquaculture and seafood industry navigate change and what that future could look like. And then where we come together in work package 4 really is, okay, so given this, what are we looking for? What are we looking for government to do, for industry to do, or research, or consumers, or investors? How do we make this information matter? So what I'm going to take you through today is the commercial roadmap. This is around wild and aquaculture. So many of you have been targeted in your invitations and how we've brought you here because you've either participated in our previous workshops or you've put forward input through surveys or you may have been interviewed. And so that's how we've chosen to engage with commercial wild and aquaculture. We do also have alternate processes for recreational and an alternate process for First Nations as well, using the navigators, because what we made as a decision early on in this project is rather than the project team necessarily learning some of these aspects, we would bring in experts who could work with those other seafood contributors, views and opinions and perspectives on seafood as well outside that commercial space. So we've got 2 First Nation cultural navigators, and we have a recreational navigator as well, who has also helped determine some priorities for those particular groups. Next slide.
While I have the mic, just a reminder, if you do have any questions as we're moving through the presentation, please pop those into the chat and Ange and I will work through those.
Yeah. So the roadmap itself is very much focused on the time period from right now, 2026, and we've actually capped it at 2035. Now, the study itself and the work that Beth has done does go out to 2040. It does go further, but what we've really focused on are what are some of those more immediate stages, and I'll take you through that in a minute. This is a consultation version. There is a survey that I'll take you through as well, which will guide how we're seeking views and opinions. But here's the roadmap. Off we go. So with the work Beth had done around our scenario modelling, it really sat around 3 different scenarios, from struggling to surviving and ultimately thriving. And the work that Beth had done was really look at where are we at the moment and where are we heading and what kind of interventions either could nature might make that push us in particular directions or government policy might take that would push us in different directions or industry could take. And when we started this work, we really thought we were fully sitting in that surviving space. And this really was just a jump from surviving to thriving. And it was very much about not looking back at that struggling and ensuring we weren't struggling. But what became really clear during this process was that across Australia, that our fisheries, our aquaculture sectors, really sit across all of these already, and that there's a really heavy space already in that struggling area. And so They're not just looking to get to surviving, they're looking to get to that thriving. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that space. On the other hand, there were industries where their species might have been quite prolific. There might have been really optimal market elements, but ultimately they were more in that surviving, thriving space. But when it comes to the roadmap, our intent is to provide a reset, a series of actions that really move us and aim us towards that thriving space. Next slide, please. And the case for this reset was, as I said, all of those other work packages that really started to lay out some key things that I think in many cases we may have already known, but they weren't in a single source. It wasn't a single document or a single study that pulled everything together and kind of basically said, listen, the current system can't deliver those future outcomes. And by system, I mean the governance arrangements. I mean the fragmentation across a lot of the organisations in industry, but also within government. And ultimately, the system doesn't have enough in it around enabling adaptation. Quite often it's around maintenance. It's not around optimization, growth, or evolution. And it certainly didn't bring in some of those resilience elements. And I think that over the course of the 2 years we've been doing this study, I'll just throw some things at you right now that you'd be able to say, yeah, I think that this is true. If you look at gear bans in the case of gill nets, if you look at the WA government decision around the future of the demersal fishing there, if you look at the harmful algal bloom, in South Australia, if you have a look at some of the rain events and consequences and catchments and catch in the New South Wales area, and then if you start having a look at some of the market decisions in China around abalone, or the market decisions in one way or another with China in with regards to rock lobster, there's a variety of factors going on. Then throw in biosecurity, for example, and the introduction of rickettsia in the salmon system, or just a variety of these activities and actions, and which have ultimately impacted Australia's seafood balance sheet. And so as things drop, what we've noticed is whether Australian production seafood's dropped, we're noticing already that imports are increasing. And so that balance sheet's already out of whack. So current system can't deliver. Just touched on it there, this climate change, it's already shifted the baseline. Now, we can't control a variety of aspects in that space, but at the same time, how do you adapt to things around, as Beth presented, the consequences of those marine heat waves, warmer and quite hot operating environment, what that means around diseases, but also species redistribution. So these were starting to impact already our productivity and productivity areas, costs, and reliability across the industry. Now, compared to a lot of other countries, and we have had a look globally at what's going on, Australia is losing our strategic optionality when it comes to the ocean estate that we have. We have one of the largest marine estates, third largest EEZ, and our production is quite modest, and it's increasingly constrained for a variety of reasons. And those primary growth pathways, are restricted, whether it's access, approvals, social license, or the capital intensity in the aquaculture context. So the modelling work showed that there is this positive, thriving future, but only where producers are given space to adapt and fishers are able to adapt or to move or to have some gear optionality within their permits and approvals. And so we're starting to see this play out in other places in the world, but it hasn't quite got here yet. And then this sort of links into this last part, which is that spatial competition is reshaping the marine estate. If you're a new and emerging industry, you are coming into areas that already have, let's say, an Australian fishing zone that sits above it. It's part of our sovereignty. It's part of our obligations. And so you already have traditional fishers, but then you might have an energy industry being entered, or you might have a desal plan, or we might be increasing our space options. And so then you've got rocket areas that you're not allowed to go to. So there's all of these things that are happening, and it's just that continued squeeze and availability and access. And one of the most important ones that really came out in this process was the consequences of marine protected areas and shifts and changes in those zoning approaches in the pursuit of targets, or political election commitments or other aspects there. And in the absence of a full appreciation and understanding of probably that broader other effective conservation measure setting within the ocean estate already. So all of these things together really highlighted we're not on the right trajectory to be able to reach that thriving, and we're being held back from it for a variety of reasons. Next slide, please. So Futures of Seafood is proposing a different pathway. That pathway has 3 areas between now and that 2035 period. And we're talking about stabilisation. So how do we stabilise the industry and the seafood production piece? How do we then move to a transition period? So that stabilisation, I'll touch on some pieces in more detail, but, you know, sitting behind that is a national guarantee that Australian seafood is going to continue and that the Australian government will prioritise it, for example. But then also things around governance architecture, as I touched on, the absence of harmonisation, the absence of data at similar levels and scales and availability to be able to make informed decisions, and that coordination element. Then we move into this transition period, which is really focused on enabling resilience in wild catch and strengthening that, and whether that's productivity around, dare I say, fuel and other aspects, or OPEX and CAPEX spends to be able to increase your margins. And in the context of aquaculture, that ability to find scalable options land and sea. And I really want to shout out here to the land-based activities as well, and the role of the supply chain on land that moves us from landing or production locations to consumers and households. This also builds in a more rapid response system. I touched on a series of areas earlier that have come about over these 2 years. If you have the magnifying glass on this particular sector and this industry. So how do you learn from what one another are going through, and how do we make sure that we're ready for what's next, and who needs to be part of those conversations? And so that's that real crisis risk kind of approach as well. And moving towards unified engagement, unified management, unified operational aspects there. Which then, you know, if we use 30 by 30 as a parks, as let's use 2030 as a time period, the goal is post 2030, we want to be thriving. So what are the things we need to put in place over this next 4 years to be able to post 2030 be just thriving and just nailing it? So a more climate resilient seafood system, got that guarantee in place, and it's being able to deliver food security and the role of seafood in Australia's food systems. That there is regional prosperity, that there are those ecosystem gains if you're looking at restoration and other areas that are super important, and that Australia becomes that global leader that we are recognised as, and that we're seen as that by everybody. So our system is struggling. We appreciate that we've reached this structural inflection point. We are looking to put forward a different pathway. There are roles for everyone, and the roadmap does set these out. And we are genuinely looking at whether you're an investor, industry, research, or government to play these particular roles to help in this reset. It is an evidence-based reset. A lot of the information I'll take you through of these next pieces have been aggregated and analysed across all the information that's been collected, and then taken through a peer review process as well, which has led to some adjustments to the roadmap. Next slide, please. So the roadmap sets up 5 national reform priorities. These are umbrella priorities. They are absolute non-negotiables in the sense of moving forward. One of those resets, as I touched on, really sits in the National Seafood Guarantee. And this is looking at a national policy that treats seafood production as strategic infrastructure as a priority. It has to acknowledge the importance of securing access and tenure. It needs to acknowledge that balance sheet I touched on of imports, of recreational, of commercial, of aquaculture, and have some visibility across all of those jurisdictions, because right now you're in a position where decisions in one jurisdiction might impact and is impacting the broader balance sheet for us. Reduced regulatory duplication. This is an industry that has layers and layers of whether it's engagement between an Environment EPBC Act and the Fisheries Management, and then there are some duplication or the absence of risk retirement, but ultimately it's an industry that's sort of grown, or its regulatory settings, sorry, have grown and adjusted over time. So we're looking for removal of those duplications and of those redundancies in the system. We've all highlighted the inequity, the uneven playing field or unlevel playing field when it comes to import standards and the expectations on Australian fishers and farmers compared to what's coming in and consumed in that, 68% I would say now we've imported. And that adaptive governance piece, so the ability to be able to, build in adaptation into governance that we've based on learnings and those other areas. Moving across to industry unity, this was a very industry focused study. It was very much about industry being able to put forward insights and experiences backed in by data and evidence and then tested. But one of the things that was really clear is that just like we have 8 federated jurisdictions managing various things, there is 280 either peak bodies or industry groups established by government that sit in the seafood space across Australia. And so that is tough if you are a minister or a department looking to engage. It also means that messages can get lost and the strength of this industry can get distorted. So industry unity and building that unified national voice while retaining that geographical or sectoral diversity is still really important. And I would say that there's a journey ahead, but there are opportunities no different to government around shared services, harmonised national positions, while still respecting that regional and sectoral autonomy that I touched on. Another area that was really clear was the relationship back with consumers and community, and that in the absence of information coming from a variety of sources or maybe not coming consistently, that there was a need for seafood amplification to strengthen transparency, consumer trust and market opportunities. And, there's work underway, but again, it's spread out across a number of places. So what could it look like if it was concerted and brought together? Visibility around the country of origin work, which is fundamental, and you'll start to see A, I and O's, I think it is, on menus around Australia, July onwards. So start seeing what that means in the country of origin context. Seafood plays a really important role in nutritional narratives, and it's often forgotten. The ability to put that back into the mix, I think, is going to be really important. And so seafood amplification, the investment in communications, in campaigns, in information and knowledge and training and education is going to be super important. And also the sustainability narrative, which is this is a really highly sustainable industry managed and governed very, very tightly across Australia. As well as all of those certifications that are in play. And so how does that get amplified, that public education piece, and also responding to misinformation, which has been a really crucial gap or threat to the industry more broadly. Selena, I might get you to write rather than hand up, if that's okay, so we can keep going and we can jump in at the same time rather than stopping, if that's okay. Do you want to just type in chat?
Yeah, any questions, please pop those through into the chat. Thank you. National rapid response capability, I touched on that earlier. There's a real challenge at the moment in being able to coordinate or optimize the learnings by various sectors or parts of the country. So how can we coordinate our crisis responses, whether it's climate, biosecurity, market, harmful algal bloom, you name it. So how do you use data and knowledge differently and be able to use that to inform? And so right now we're living this in the context of fuel and the consequences of the Iran war and the availability of fuel. And if you're looking across the country at the moment, every jurisdiction and regions are being dealt a little bit differently in this piece. So what does it look like in that rapid response opportunity? Crisis response plans, unified communications, same message, many voices, and transparent risk management. So that was an area that was identified because we were starting to see various sectors or jurisdictions or companies facing particular issues, and then that learning, whether it's a win or a loss, wasn't necessarily shared out more broadly. So this can help everyone learn together and adapt together and be ready for next time. Touched on with 1 and 2 around industry unity and the National Seafood Guarantee, which has a real government unity element. Realistically, there's another sector here that needs to play a really important role, and that's R&D. There's an opportunity for the R&D systems to be better optimised
How do we deliver decision-ready science for industry, for government, for those decisions, for markets, but aligned with those operational needs? So again, is there an opportunity to better align priorities, to reduce duplication, to strengthen adoption and move the dial, and also bring in again that climate adaptation element, which was upfront and central in the work that Beth had done in Work Package 3. How do we better understand that system and be able to be aware and not just surprised at the end? Next slide, thanks. So while they were reform priorities, we also identified a series of system and enablers. And so these are really around the tools, the knowledge, the information that was collected during futures. We had this ambition that rather than we wait another 20 years for the next project, that this kind of data and knowledge and system and tool could be available straight away, with the view of getting scale more appropriate, use increased across the sectors and by government. And so there's a series of things here that I'll just touch on really quickly that are in the roadmap. So got these big reforms up top, bold, ambitious, but at the end of the day, fundamental as part of the reset, owned by different people, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But sitting underneath it is this foundational piece around national data infrastructure, around the knowledge products, around the models and tools that are available to inform how you invest, how you deal with risk. The system architecture as well, like really understanding, you know, that future state and where you want to be and what that means. Now that can be looked at from a governance perspective and auditing the governance arrangements, the R&D piece, the market, there are all of those elements. But right now we're looking to ensure that that roadmap's implementation, you know, really shifts from aspirations into delivery. And that's going to be a really important part of this as well. And then the impact statement. Those who are in government in the room here would be very aware that when you're doing a new policy proposal, you have to put in a regulatory impact statement, especially around introducing new legislation or adjustments to legislation. And that's a really important piece of the mix. But what we really wanted to do was to be able to ask whether inform a seafood impact statement. So when cabinet are making decisions about other things, that up front and centre there is some information in the room, or whether it's in the lead up to those discussions, that outlines what the seafood sector's value is. And if this decision is made, is that value and an opportunity going to increase, or is it going to decrease? So that you can look at it from a national seafood perspective, providing again that credible evidence-based impact statement that pulls together all of this information across GDP, jobs, food security, nutritional environment. One of the reasons, I'll just stop here for a minute before I move on, is when the decision was made to ban gill nets, the decision was made with a variety of reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but what I am going to say is that I, off the back of this experience, was following the flow of where that seafood that is no longer caught that way, or actually no longer accessed by industry anymore, where that was flowing, who was consuming it, what were the supply chain between landing and consumption, and what were those consequences. So having information like this is going to be really important, but it's also going to be important when decisions are being made by catchment issues or land-based activities that then have flow-ons downstream to industry and in those inshore, nearshore fisheries as well, or aquaculture areas. So this provides a foundation for confidence in decision making, whether it's policy reform or funding or things along those lines that ultimately put seafood first. You can also use it in your own work. If you're a company, you're able to use this in how you advocate, how you lobby, how you position your funding opportunities, and how you participate in investment arrangements and conversations as well. Next, please. Now, the roadmap is accompanied by a series of playbooks. So for each of those 10 areas that I just touched on very quickly, if you wanted to dig into more detail, alongside the roadmap are these playbooks that really provide some context, a path forward, and the benefits as to why this is an important area. Many of you who have participated in this process, I really hope you start to see some of your language in here, or your experiences or your insights, because this really starts to articulate that context, that path forward, and ultimately the benefits that you are seeking, or those experiences you've faced. So each of them have a playbook, as well. Next slide. The roadmap, as I said, has those 3 phases within it. You'll be able to sit there and have a look in a bit more detail about what we're anticipating over those first, over those different periods. Phase 1, stabilisation, is a year. I want to be really clear why I think it's really important that that first stage is quite short and sharp. It's like really where everyone has been getting ready and now we're asking to go and commit and do things. We're looking for the guarantee. I think that's going to be a really important. It's not just symbolic to industry. It's government saying, hey, this is a really important industry and we're going to ensure it sticks around and we're going to be mindful of it and making decisions. And we see that this is a strategic food and nutritional infrastructure piece for Australia. And while this has Futures of Seafood has been funded predominantly by Commonwealth agencies, it was very much about a national piece. And so that's why this guarantee is very focused on national elements. So you're looking for Commonwealth, but we are also looking for the state and territory governments to sign on to this as well. So a really important element into the mix. I'm going to throw another one in here, which is marine food production zones. I want to be really clear that's not just aquaculture. This is acknowledging that these are areas that are essential for food production. So when you are looking at new things coming into the mix, you need to be aware straight away that number 1 priority here is food. And, you know, that's one of those base elements. We've also highlighted things here along the lines of fleet and infrastructure transition and whether that's around decarbonisation, off the back again of the fuel situation, but at the same time, more broadly, looking at, because CapEx is such an important piece in the mix. And if you look at our current fleet or our current land-based infrastructure, it's very clear that we are looking for a boost. So the ability to redirect maybe some existing funds or some existing focus by the Australian government or jurisdictions into this industry to support these things are going to be absolutely fundamental. And I'll just jump through the next 2 very quickly. So transition, as I touched on earlier, moving towards that. Next one. Next.
Transition.
Next one.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all good. To thriving is really about
That's where we
moving
wanna
us through
go.
that trajectory. And if you recall the goal and the language, and thank you so much, Beth, to introducing us to the reality of where industry is and wants to be, that this thriving piece, which really resonated with many of those in the room in our various meetings, really was about embedding, and it was locking in that resilient systems, our national relevance of this industry, whether it is commercial wild, whether it is aquaculture, but also acknowledging the competitiveness and not just within the industries, but also against other protein sources in Australia. So this is like the gold star where we're aiming to be, that market leadership element, you know, off the back of amplification and investments in markets and comms. The idea is absolutely fundamental to move us through here. I just had a look at one of the comments there and I'll just jump in really quickly. Let's just look at the next slide first, because maybe it's in this one. Okay, no, sorry, I'll jump in either way. But one of the points made there was to be able to achieve stabilisation. This is not just an issue for a federal fisheries minister or your state fisheries ministers. Up front and centre is that relationship between a fisheries minister in Australia and our environment minister, in particular that EPBC Act. The EPBC Act has specificity in it for fisheries, for commercial fisheries. There aren't a lot of other industries that have that same level of specificity. And so 100% right, Martin, I think you've indicated that first and foremost, the relationship between those 2 portfolios, the policy reform that is needed in that space, the attention to that detail is going to be absolutely fundamental, because a park break for growth or for investor confidence does sit between the relationship of those 2. 100% agree. That was definitely up front, and you'll be able to read that in the playbook. We've been very clear about that. But what we're here to do today as well is get into how you can participate in this process. So there are a couple of different ways that where you're invited. You've got these webinars, which allows you to hear the process and sort of some of the high level thinking, to put forward some questions. We record any of these questions in addition to answering here. We will also ensure that we put on our website. the website itself, where you can download and review the draft of the roadmap and the playbooks, and then ultimately providing your feedback via an online survey. Next slide, please. You're in one of these, won't say any more. You're in the last one of these, unless JP and I decide that we might need another one, which we can converse after this, JP, I think. Next slide. So download on the website, and I want to be really clear because I think sometimes we just jump to the roadmap, and then I've had some commentary around, oh, where's this or where's that? And I've said, I'll jump into the other side of that part of the website and click on one of those actions, and you'll be able to see the playbooks. So for example, I'm going to say straight up, one of the things that's been put forward to me already, and this is what I want you to think about when you're filling out your surveys, is maybe that the jobs and skills and training isn't strong enough in the documentation. And so, straight up thinking about, okay, that's great. How do we make sure we get that in? Next slide. But that's what it's about. It's a have you say. This QR code can get you there. JP has also provided a link. We have a live website that is available to be able to undertake a consultation feedback form. This was closing out and does close out this week. However, we have, or early next week, mid next week was closing out. But if you would like an extension, we are providing a 7-day extension. On the website, there's a click here where you can register that, and so that we know what's coming, and it allows the project team in particular to get ready, because there has been a lot of submissions today, and I've really appreciated reading those and understanding the perspectives and thoughts and opinions. There are 56 questions within it, but please understand you can ignore some as you go through. You're not going to be held hostage or by the survey itself. But we are really trying to understand what your prioritization is around here. What's missing? What are some of the narrative elements that might not quite be sitting right with you? And this looks against, in particular, the top 5 reform resets, but also into that data and that knowledge and the system that sits behind it. There is an opportunity. Our focus really is industry consultation. There is an opportunity if you're online and you're putting forward a perspective from another sector. There's some pull downs that allow us to understand where that's come through. But we really appreciate everyone who has provided information. I genuinely appreciate those who are coming in at this point and still willing to participate. Really, really, really value that and welcome that. So thank you so much. Next slide. So timeline, just want to take you through this. And there is an adjustment at the end here that I'll just touch on. But we did provide access to all of the peak bodies earlier, and have given them additional prompts for if those peak bodies are looking to hold AGMs or meetings or board sessions that they would like JP and I to present at, or one of us to come and have a chat about the roadmap and the project more broadly. So we provided quite a lot of information to help support those peak bodies in the delivery of their roles. And they've played such an important role in seafood, in Futures of Seafood, alongside Seafood Industry Australia. And so I've genuinely appreciated the time, the thoughts, the thinking, because while this is national, we are looking to ensure that we don't accidentally stumble over something that's super important on those jurisdictional perspectives as well. That's been so important. We then released the consultation form, this information, back in February. We've been running some regional sector briefings. We've been invited into a variety of sessions to talk about what's going on. Consultation submissions formally close on the 16th. As I touched on, there is the opportunity, if you need a little bit of extra time, to jump on and register that, and then you'll get an automatic extension. We were originally looking to summarise the submissions and publish that on the 24th, but with this extension, it's going to just click out a little bit. So it'll be towards the end of the month or early April, pre-Easter. And that really is a what we heard document. And I want to be really clear at that point. We don't edit. It sits with an aggregate at the front, but sitting behind it is the raw information as heard. There will be some analysis around some of the quantitative elements. But ultimately, you can use this document as well to be able to point to things that matter to you, because when you look at this as a final package, when we finalise the roadmap and we launch that, as well as all the other packages around work packages 1, 2, and 3, and it's all available on the web, be able to see it all, is that you're able to sit there and use that information in the way that you see fit and that you need to as well. So that roadmap plays a really important role with engaging in, as I said, for government to have a think about what this all means, for industry to have a think about what this all means and respond, for research too, but also individual companies to be able to use this in prosecuting your case, your causes more broadly. I think that's it, JP.
Excellent. Thanks, Ange. Whilst you have a breather,
Yes.
we might just reiterate. So there's a couple of questions that have come through in the chat line. So Keith's got an excellent one there, which calls out, I guess, the disparity that we have often seen regarding how our industry is valued, the stats and whatnot that are put forward around the, I guess, what our industry does, the monetary value, the volume, that kind of thing. Through the program, there was a commission to specifically look at how we could better track the value of Australian seafood, but where it's actually consumed, like where it ends up, because we certainly saw that when we are compared with other sectors, say beef industry, for example, there's an assumption that we also export most of our product, or a large volume of our product, but the opposite is actually true. So there's a couple of comments there to sort of answer your question, Keith. So one is when you're looking at the data and information that comes out of ABARES, for example, with the valuation of the industry, that stops it at beach landing. So they don't have the ability and the statistical functions to actually move and track product and the increase in value beyond beach landing through the rest of the supply chain. One of the sort of stems of work that was undertaken through this project was to do that and to see as best we could how we could actually come back with a clear valuation, if at all possible, for each of the fisheries across Australia. That was not possible for every single one just because of data availability, but what we have been able to do is be able to better track. So product might be landed in Queensland. Where does that product then be? Where is it then sold? Where is it consumed? And statistically, when you look at the breakdown and the information that has been able to be pulled out through the project, it would appear that most states, for the most part, the seafood that you catch or produce within your state stays in your state, is consumed in your state. And at a local advocacy level, that's a really important message. So as a part of the program, what we have developed is a series of sort of infographics and other things which could be used at point of sale, could be used in state-based advocacy, that kind of thing, which will hopefully be of assistance. And that allows us to have a cross comparison in terms of data and information that ABARES might be putting out, which stops at a particular point in the supply chain, versus what we have been able to extrapolate with the data and information we've been able to pull from various retailers, for example. That information will all be publicly available as well on the Species of Seafood website. In terms
I might jump in there as well and say, from that context, what's been really fantastic with that is the figure that is actually available compared to the ABARES figure that you touched on, JP, is like it's 11.9 billion. That's the actual contribution once you take into account final sales value, jobs, and moving up to your gross domestic product rather than just at landing. So that's a significant uptake from the 3.9, I think it was when we first started this. I think it's 4.1 billion on the most recent ABARES, JP, but ultimately that's excluding a large part. So when you are doing comparisons, like the work that was done by, I think it was Deloitte's for Recreational not that long ago, these are now like apples and apples. Previously it was an apple and an orange comparison. So it's really good to start getting this information. And one of the things in that system piece we touched on is how do we now turn this into the ongoing reporting and ongoing data inputs and outputs so that we can have this information made available annually.
Yeah. I would say too, so the next question that's coming from Martin is just around, so how is stabilisation actually possible at a time when the Environment Minister is increasing the areas closed to fishing, and so essentially referencing the marine park review that's underway at the moment? I guess in response, so Ange has already provided a little bit of commentary in relation to this question earlier. I would also say that Minister Watt who currently is now the Environment Minister, was previously the Minister of Ag and was one of the primary forces in helping us actually drive and secure funding for this program of work. So he is, I guess, intimately familiar with its objectives. And we feel we are in a really positive place to be able to come back to Minister Watt to be able to utilise the data and evidence that's been generated out of this project regarding the marine spatial mapping, for example, to use that to be the base level of data and evidence that is used to inform the review. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that in particular, Ange.
No, I think we accept that. I think that's the whole
Already, yeah.
reason, you know, we're talking
Yeah.
about this seafood impact statement, and we're talking about better information available for making decisions. One of the things I wanted to put on the table is, if I think about how prepared I'm hoping industry is, I'm very aware off the back of futures for the conversation on this 30 by 30, or put 30 away, this review, compared to when Tony Burke introduced these back in the day. We now have a lot more data and knowledge. We have forecasts from the work that Beth has done. We're looking at all of the fisheries measures as other effective conservation measures that could ultimately contribute without losing the integrity of what they are. But I just think industry is going to be way more prepared than they've ever been. And I'm really looking forward to watching how SAA and the peak bodies engage in that way. And I'm really just wanted to say that all the futures tools and knowledge and data is available to be able to help support that process. And I don't think we've had that before. And not saying that that's going to change necessarily the decision at the end of the day. And I encourage you all to engage and participate in a meaningful way. But I'm just excited that we've been able to pull this all together. At the same time, I'm absolutely devastated that at the same time we've been trying to plan out what, you know, and get ready for where futures of seafood sort of sits, that we've been dealing with those different issues that have just been coming. It has just been one thing after the other. And, you know, we talked about the cumulative impacts and the fact that there is no COP or no traffic controller that looks across all of these nationally, and you know, has some accountability compared to whether it's water or soil or other sectors that do have this. We just one thing after another, and so that's a real shame.
So we've got a few minutes left. If anyone has any additional questions, please pop those through into the chat. I would say that in the previous two webinars, we've had questions around what has government's level of engagement and involvement been in the program. So to quickly summarise that, obviously, as we said at the beginning, we were able to secure funding from a number of different departments at a federal level. We've also seen a great deal of in-kind assistance from the different jurisdictions in terms of providing data and a variety of other, you know, pieces of input into the project. Throughout, I guess, the governance structure set up through the project, the whole way through, we've been actively engaging federally and at a jurisdictional level with key interested parties across government, industry, and other ocean stakeholders as well. So throughout, I feel there's been fairly heavy engagement, and I know some of the commentary coming back from different parties within government is that they're really interested in the outputs of the program and the data and evidence that's been developed to assist them in making decisions moving forward. Anything you want to add to that in particular, Ange, or?
I was just going to say, I'm also going to be really mindful. On one hand, I've highlighted all of the things that have probably impacted negatively the seafood balance sheet. I do want to also highlight some things that are on the table that I think are things we should all think about how best to participate in. So one of those, for example, is productivity and the whole push from Minister Chalmers on increasing productivity. Now, productivity to me equals dereg, and it equals, you know, ensuring that there is more money and profitability within companies. And so I think the ability to look at that regulatory reform opportunity, to be able to look at maintaining the scrutiny that's needed, but at the same time retiring risk that has not been achieved, I think is super important. And then the other one I wanted to put on the table was the food security piece as well. So the fact that food security is now a priority of the Albanese government and an election commitment, I think it's really important in understanding how those two things that I just touched on compete against, let's say, a marine protected area, 30 by 30 commitment, or some of these other things, because actually there's some balancing that needs to be taken into this, because on one hand one pulls, and on one hand the other looks to grow. And so that I think, we should be really mindful of that during that process as well.
Thanks, Ange. Did you want to perhaps comment on the question in there around the size of the prize? So we've been able to map current value of industry, but question there from Sydney Fish Market around potential value.
So one of the pieces that we have still ahead of the work that Beth has is with BDO, who are the ones who have undertaken the work to get us to that 12 bill amount, which is amazing, is we're looking to bring in some of those scenarios. So what Beth's thriving scenario could look like. So there's an ability there to bring that into the finalisation of the work. Yes, that's to come. And hopefully it's an amazing figure.
A question too around, okay, what is the consultation model? I like your wording, Brett, to keep the cats herded in the same direction. I have many jokes I could make in relation to that. However, Ange, do you want to have first crack?
Okay, come and fix it up, sweep it up after I make a mistake here. Let's go. No. Coordination is going to be fundamental. Research, I'm going to start with research coordination in the first instance, because research has become an industry in its own. And so the ability to protect her or areas I totally understand is part of the mix. And I can see industry at times get really frustrated by that. And I can also see governments needing that for a variety of reasons. But, Futures was going to get uncomfortable, and this is the uncomfortable stage. And so there's going to be various leaders of cats, or like, who was the one that had all the rats that used to follow him with the Pied Piper or whatever? Either way, there'll be some leaders who are going to need to step up and be able to really, play a role in this. And so, John, I'm looking at you in the context of the role of Seafood Industry Australia. You are going to be working with some amazing people who have amazing history and backgrounds, who want to contribute to this and want to do it in a way that is meaningful, and we don't lose value and we don't get lost. So the same message, many voices, I think is going to be fundamental. In the research space, I think we've got to equally lean in, get uncomfortable, and have a look at how we can better support this industry. And what sits behind it? Is it cost recovery? Is it levies? All of these bits and pieces that are already impacting that margin and that bottom line we're talking about in the productivity space. So how can we optimize? And then in the government side, we are looking to DAF in the context of their leadership, and Minister Collins to play a really important role with her counterparts, and DAF with their counterparts as well, to be able to not just look at it from a Commonwealth perspective, but nationally. So you look at the MINCOs, the ministerial committees and council meetings that they have, and what role the feds can play, but then ultimately to bring those other states along as well. So there is going to be a variety of models in play. I'm not going to jump into too much of them because I'm not owning any of those, but we've definitely put forward some thoughts and ideas to various leaders around the place and encouraging them, because this has been a significant investment in time and effort, and we're looking to make sure it's valuable and meaningful outcomes, and not just another report that sits on a shelf, because that would just ruin, I think, the whole intent here.
Thanks, Ange. A question around, has there been, during the process, we've been consulting with a variety of other industries, and I assume Ocean News is the intent behind the question. Has there been a conversation about collaboration on data? So I guess there's a couple of responses to that. One is that certainly when we were pitching this program of work to Minister Watt initially, when he was in the ag portfolio, he was interested in the model, the methodology, and potentially how that could be rolled out and used across other industries in the ag sector to answer similar questions. I'm not sure if that's the part of the intent behind your question, Jazz. But then I think also moving forward, there's opportunity to look at that that data and deliverables out of the program of work here being probably the most comprehensive that we have and up to date, drawing on the most different sources and to be able to use in a variety of consultations moving forward, such as Marine Park Review, for example. So, and that would be the ability to share that data across the interested parties involved in that. So I've just got a couple more questions. So Matt's got a question around the human resourcing topic and how that feeds into futures and how we incentivize next generation to get involved in this sector. Again, I think Ange mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but that has been brought forward as something that could be made stronger within the roadmap. So that's something that we're taking on board. Any suggestions there, Matt, that you're able to provide through the feedback mechanisms in terms of what you'd like to see happen there would be great. But it's definitely that access to workforce, skilled and unskilled, is very much of interest to the entire industry, wildcatch and aquaculture and post-harvest.
And JP, I might jump in there as well and say we're hoping that the seafood amplification can be play a really important role as well in building pride, so that we're able to maintain our workforce, our existing workforce, but also encourage their families to also share that pride. You know, social license can really, or perceive, I hate the word social license, but that kind of sentiment can be really tough. And so we're really trying to like build it and make sure people are proud of what it is they're doing. And at the same time see this, and that's where future workforce, what it looks like in different sectors, and thinking about full supply chain and thinking about the whole piece is going to be really important. We've started some conversations with some of the jurisdictions about things with schools, within schools. It's like how to build it from a marine estate literacy kind of element through to recreational, commercial and aquaculture elements. And if anyone can come up with the seafood equivalent of norm, life be in it kind of versions, or slip, stop, slap kind of elements, I think there's some really neat ideas there ahead for this industry. I think the nutritional element, I think the role it plays, I think everyone loves the marine estate and oceans, and it's part of our identity. And I think it should go hand in hand with sort of where we're heading. So there's something really neat there. We're very mindful. Futures of Seafood in many ways has been presented as something that we've hoped everyone's been proud to participate in. We've invested in the campaign, the brand, the comms. There's a lot more to go in that space, and our launch will as well. We are really focused on bringing back pride and that unity piece and that element. So I think that's going to be really fundamental.
And one final question, and then we might wrap. We've touched on a number of other deliverables that the program has been working on, Ange. So on the website at the moment, people have access to the atlas. There's summaries that are there around all of the previous workshops and whatnot we've had within each of the jurisdictions. You can sort of look at the have you say and what's been said in relation to your region. But we're expecting out of this also profiles for each of the fisheries and aquaculture sectors across Australia, a number of case studies with a variety of different themes as well. Did you want to quickly touch on what's coming and when as well?
Absolutely. So the idea is to have associated with the launch, ideally prior to the launch, but definitely associated with the launch would be the full suite. We have a seafood scape. We have profiles on all the fisheries. We have gear profiles as well that have been looked at from a risk perspective. And we're hoping like the trawling one and things like that can help reshape the story and demonstrate the continuous improvement across activities and infrastructure. There is the BDO seafood fact sheet, so you'll start to see the flow of seafood and who's consuming. There are also some things that weren't part of the original deliverables, but that JP and I have been looking at and thinking about how do we make this available as well, because there is a wealth of information that's there. So they might be like industry outlooks that are kind of like not ABARE style outlook, but kind of like if I pulled together, let's say all sectors, so let's go an aquaculture one, or let's have a look at wild and have a look at sort of that state of play at a more detail than what was originally intended. There are interviews with a variety of people. Thank you to those online who were interviewed by JP or the team. So it doesn't read like new idea, but they are beautiful kind of stories and narratives and experiences that people have faced. So there's a message bank. And one of the things that we're looking to do as well is this website becomes a home for all this information. But let's say you are trying to talk to your local MP about the role of seafood. You could draw down from this message bank as well and be able to have a look at what's going on and share that with them so that they can also share those stories. We would like seafood to be the topic of conversation over, in the lead up to the launch and post the launch as well, and moving forward.
Well,
and Beth's mega work for work package 3. It is beautiful. It is a bleak story, but it's got hope in it. It's a saga. It's a Twilight, trilogy sort of style piece there, and it's going to really move the dial. And I'm trying to work out still how to give it the honor that it needs. So you'll have work package 3, and Beth and I will be doing hopefully JP, you can join us. We'll be doing a little bit of a road show as we finalize that and take it out to everybody as well over that April period. So you can see the final end product and have a think about how it sits with you and what it means. So that's going to be the piece de resistance. It's going to be beautiful.
Fine. Well, thank you so much. We're at time or just over. So I want to thank everyone again for your time today. Special shout out to Beth. Those of you who met her when we did the National Roadshow, I'm sure will agree. We were so fortunate to have her amazing mind sitting in with this project and being able to sort of draw together all the data models and whatnot to come up with a complex story that she was able to articulate so clearly and cleverly. So really appreciate that. Thanks for sitting in today, Beth.
And I might just jump in because I think Simon's on as well. The work by Atlantis in supporting the profiles and the gear work was also fundamental. Having an industry voice to be able to tell that story, and to those who contributed, again, with JP and the team as they were getting vetted, thank you so much. And unfortunately, if you're in WA, yours shifted a little over that time period as well. So just part and parcel of the process. But thank you so much, Simon and team, especially Chantal. And thanks, JP.
No worries. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and afternoon, and an enjoyable and safe weekend. Take care.